Hi everyone, this is Ariski Daoud from MEA Risk LLC. Today is Saturday, the 25th of February, and with me is Hakim, my colleague who covers North Africa. Hello Hakim. We've done a review of security issues last week, and this week we decided to actually look at an overview of the political aspects of the political life in the region. This week we decided to take a look at the political aspects of the Maghreb and Sahel, actually Maghreb specifically. But I wanted first to give you a general overview of the number of incidents that have occurred in the region. For the Maghreb and the Sahel, excluding Egypt, we have had 181 critical incidents up to, for the week ending the 24th of February, that's Friday. There were 174 deaths. The number of arrests is actually pretty big this week, 741. And that again speaks about the enforcement efforts on several fronts. Egypt has been relatively quiet, and we won't be talking too much about Egypt this time. There were only 14, 15 incidents, yet 11 deaths and a handful of arrests. The deaths seem to be concentrated in North Sinai again, where there's been a series of attacks against Christian Copts, and that's something that's really alarming a lot. So it's alarming people a lot. All right, Hakim. So with that, let's start a little bit with Morocco in the extreme west of the Maghreb. There has been still a stalemate specific to the formation of a government. Has there been any improvements there? Anything taking place that shows a new government being formed, or are we still pretty much stuck at the moment?
Thank you, Areski. So, with regards to the formation of a government in Morocco, there has been no development in the last few months. The Prime Minister, Abdelillah Ben Kiran, he has been unable to form a government with his main opponent, who is Aziza Khanouch, the Secretary General of the opposition party, the National Rally of Independence, or RNI. And the latest development was actually the PM announcing that the negotiations were over. The RNI and the other opposition party, the Popular Movement, MP, are basically now going to discuss among themselves how they could make concessions. According to the Prime Minister, the media has also been leading a smear campaign against his party. He made a very controversial statement saying that there was something wrong in Morocco due to this quote-unquote unfair campaign, and he's been really complaining about the fact that he hasn't been able to achieve what the king asked him to. So I think for now it's up to the RNI and the Popular Movement to go back to the Prime Minister and see if they could reach an agreement this month, or otherwise I think the king will have to intervene.
Yeah. So there are potentially two consequences in my opinion on based on what you just reported. The first essentially is if these divisions and lack of agreements and consensus among these political parties persist, then obviously this will have an impact on the legislative agenda. If they're that divided at the micro level, at the executive level, it would be interesting to watch how this is going to work going forward when it's time to discuss and agree on bills and laws. Second consequence is really to what extent is the executive branch really that important in Morocco? And that begs the question: is that important? I know there were countries in the past, some Western countries, but Belgium comes to mind, where it took a long time for the government to form at some point, I think like 2-3 years ago. But in the case of Morocco, again, you look at the king traveling around Africa, essentially trying to shore up support for the for Morocco's interest in focus on Western Sahara issue, and you wonder to what extent really the executive branch is part of it in general, and so that's the issue. One of the stories that your trackers have reported also this week, which caught my attention, relates to the increase in security measures around the U.S. Embassy in Rabat. I know last week you've talked quite a bit about Morocco's security stance, and I think, if I recall, one of your statements was that the kingdom is one of the key targets or the top targets of militant groups. Anything new that came out since we spoke last week that forced the Moroccan authorities to beef up security around the U.S. Embassy?
Absolutely. So there are a number of countries in the region, actually, which have beefed up security around U.S. embassies and U.S. consulates. One of those countries is Morocco, obviously. Then you have Tunisia, Algeria, and even countries in the Sahel. I think that some Islamist insurgency groups are targeting embassies and consulates from other countries as well. We can mention Spain, France. I think the US is mostly being targeted due to the travel ban that was imposed on Muslim majority countries. Moroccan authorities have actually received intelligence about possible terror plots targeting U.S. diplomatic missions and businesses. So there is a tangible threat. However, the Moroccan authorities have been successful in preventing a number of attacks in the past few years. I think it will be quite difficult for insurgents to carry out any sort of attacks in cities like Rabat or Casablanca because of the very heavy police presence, police and other security agencies as well. Mm-hmm. However, in other countries like Tunisia, for example, or Mali, it might be a little more worrisome. Morocco is a lot more prepared. Tunisia, I would say, is also very well experienced now in counterterrorism after what happened after the revolution. But I think that when it comes to the intelligence services, I think Morocco is one step ahead. Mm-hmm. Whereas Tunisia and Mali have not been able to prevent certain attacks that have definitely have had an impact on economic and political stability.
Yes. So you do rate Morocco, or you did give the Moroccans a pretty good rating when it comes to intelligence compared to, obviously, the other countries that you mentioned. There's also the other story that really came to mind. It's really not an incident per se, but really is some data that came from the Strategic Defense Intelligence that really says that Morocco is actually pushing for more defense procurement going forward. Do you see the region getting even more militarized as it is today going forward?
I think that is a possibility, especially now that most countries in the region are facing a number of security challenges. Obviously, we have counterterrorism, but there are other growing phenomena that are a source of concern. We can mention transborder crime, human smuggling, drug smuggling, organized crime in general, which countries like Algeria, Tunisia, and Morocco, and Libya, obviously, have a lot of trouble dealing with due to the porous borders mostly. I think Morocco is going to make an extra effort in the years to come. Well, first of all, because of its a competition with Algeria, first
Makes
of all.
sense.
And while Algeria is the number one importer of weapons, has been for the period between 2012 and 2016, we might see a little shift because, as we all know, Algeria is going through an economic crisis. And although this year the budget for defense-related spending has not decreased, I think if Algeria fails to diversify its economy and deal with its demons, I think it's going to have at one point to decrease the defense budget.
Yes, thanks, Hakim. I just wanted to add a couple of personal notes. I agree with you that Algeria apparently seems in a precarious situation, although the recent rise in oil prices from like $30 a year ago to 55 recently is giving that country a little more of a breathing room, so to speak. It's obviously not out of the woods as its revenue continue to be weak, and as its resources, his foreign currency stocks continue to dwindle. My concern in general is as these countries continue to push for their own defense positions, a great deal of the money that they have or that they don't have, which means a great deal of the money that they are going to borrow from the international market, is going to be used to beef up their military positions. Specifically, even more concerned is for me is really Morocco, because it's also facing economic weaknesses. It's not as if it's immune from the weakness of the global economy. It's still registering or recording very low growth rates. Many of its industries are struggling to keep up with, or at least to dealing with the weaknesses in the commodity market around the world, including fertilizers and phosphates. Things are improving slowly, but I'm not super optimistic that they might end up having more resources. Obviously, there's always been the Gulf monarchies that have supported Morocco in expanding its military base, but the Saudis in particular have been facing their own economic issues, and it remains to be seen to what extent they will be supporting. They'll be supporting Morocco. But as you pointed out, that's going to be something we're going to be watching over the next year and beyond. Let's move to Algeria, and there are a couple of stories that really caught my attention as well. One is really not so surprising, and it's sort of the default story, right? And that would be the issues of succession, and in particular, in this case, the issue of the president's health, President Bouteflika. That's the primary story that really caught my attention because it does involve a foreign leader. Can you articulate what you saw and what would be the implications? Is it a story that's worth keeping an eye on, or really is it much ado about nothing?
Well, I think this isn't really news. We all know that President Bouteflika has been completely absent from the public eye since his stroke in 2013. This throat infection that he's had has, according to insider sources, left him bedridden and unable to speak. So I think for a man in his condition, it makes sense to cancel such an important visit from the Chancellor of Germany. Although the topics that were scheduled to be discussed were of utmost importance, we can think of immigration, security, cooperation. However, while the president has been absent, he still has been voicing his concerns about the future of the country, mostly tackling issues that are relative to the economy. He's also been referring to a foreign plot, that would destabilize Algeria. At the end of the day, Abdelaziz Bouteflika is still releasing statements. He's somewhat active, but is he really fit to govern? That is the ultimate question.
Yeah, yeah. I was thinking about a couple of things, at least one little thing when you were talking about communications. Would it be nice if they actually gave him a Twitter account, and he, and he does pretty much what Donald Trump does, communicating via Twitter. It is absolutely true that the country is riddled with arms caches, particularly in the south and in the bordering towns near Mali, Niger, and Libya. And so, are there people dead set on creating trouble in Algeria? For sure, there's no doubt about it. They don't necessarily have to be a particular power or a particular foreign country. It could be, but generally we know that these are insurgency groups in general. You wanted to add something?
Yes. So I think what the government officials have been referring to as well is social unrest. Somehow, especially the Minister of Interior, has basically hinted at the fact that some of the austerity protests that broke out in early January 2017 were basically fomented by foreign countries, neighboring countries. And this actually caused a huge backlash on social media, I noticed, because most people who were critical would accuse him of trying to find a scapegoat for Algeria's troubles. And I think that, yes, on the security front, there are a number of challenges that definitely come from neighboring countries, but socially, I think the government is dead set on the idea that foreign countries are also, neighboring countries are trying to hamper stability in order to lead to a snowball effect that would prompt the ultimate downfall of the regime.
Yeah, yeah, and look, I mean, there is absolutely no doubt in my mind that countries that compete for regional control tend to certainly deploy resources to undermine the other one to get rid of competition. In fact, I'm getting a little bit out of topic here, but we just finished an analysis looking at Egypt and Saudi Arabia relations. These countries are brotherly countries. There's only a few miles separating them, in the Gulf of in the Sinai area, and yet competition is enormous to the point that the Saudis are basically erecting all sorts of obstacles against Egypt on a number of issues, so that basically they position themselves as the regional leader. So we know that, everybody knows that. I think we need to deal with them as as they come, and not overstate things. On the other hand, as you pointed out, there is a growing role of social media, which every government has to be aware of. Every government must know that Facebook at any given time has 1.4 billion people on its platform. How are you going to stop that? This is another power that needs to be harnessed and used for better communication than as opposed to using it to complain that people are plotting and scheming. People have point of views, they will say them online or offline, and that's how it works. So let's move very quickly to Libya. There are a few interesting stories, not a lot this week, because most of what happened this week really concentrated on the usual, which is the continued fights and the litany of people dying, sadly. On the political front, and I'm not sure we're going to talk about that, but if you have some thoughts about it, there's been rumors that Faiz Sarraj will be traveling to Moscow. I don't know if you've heard about that. I don't even know if it happened. But I know that the Russians have been flirting for quite some time with his arch rival to the east. I will not use the word marshal. I'll use General Haftar, who's been to Moscow, I think, a couple of times. But now it appears that Faiz al-Sarraj is going to be the next one going there, which actually creates an interesting dynamic one that means that the Russians really may not necessarily want to to get into to stick side in the so-called in this ongoing food fight, but they might want to play. They want to play sort of a mediator role as opposed to taking side the way they did in Syria. So I'd love to get your point of view if you've heard about that. But clearly, I think the main other story that we saw, beside obviously all the security issues, is a alleged attempt against Fayez al-Sarraj this week. Can you shed some light if you have some thoughts on that, Hakim?
Yeah, so I think Fayez al-Sarraj has definite plans to try and open a dialogue with the Russian authorities, despite the fact that Russia has time and again voiced its support to Khalifa Haftar and his army. I think it's a very strategic move from Fayez al-Sarraj, who we know is backed by the United Nations and a number of countries, including Algeria, Tunisia. Although Tunisia has been trying to dialogue with Haftar as well. So yeah, I think it is very important for the UN-backed government to try and win the support of Russia. Although I don't think that Russia will side with them, for the simple reason that Russia has a lot more interests with the Eastern government. With regards to the assassination attempt, yes, there was an attempt targeting Fayez al-Sarraj and President of the State Council, Abdulrahman Suwahli. Both of their motorcades were targeted by the militia that supports the Islamist-leaning government of Khalifa Rouail. There is an investigation ongoing, but I think what we can take from this story is that in Libya everything goes haywire very quickly. It just anything can happen at any time, and it is still somehow in a state of lawlessness. Tripoli has been hit by a number of clashes between rival militias. Benghazi is still not completely liberated from the Islamic State and Ansar al-Sharia. Down south, you have ISIS supporters and fighters conglomerating and trying to rebuild. And Libya is definitely an immense source of instability for the whole continent, the whole region first, and then the whole continent, I suppose, because there's such an influx of weapons, drugs, militants into a huge number of countries in Africa.
Thank you for that, Hakim. Let me just close very quickly with Egypt. As you noticed, we really didn't talk about Tunisia. There hasn't been much going on there, and we're going to revisit that next week. Specific to Egypt, really, the news continues to focus on the instability and the security issues up in North Sinai Peninsula, where basically we continue to have a series of terror attacks, many of them targeting civilians. There's been an uptick in attacks targeting Copts, Christians. Those are Christian minority in Egypt. The Christians are minority. The Copts account for roughly less than 10% of the 90 million people. So it's pretty about 9 million of them there. But the ones that actually live in the rest of North Sinai are really feeling the heat. And over the past couple of weeks, I think 6 of them have been assassinated by alleged local militants. Police and the military continue to be also the targets. There's been 3 of them. There've been 3 of them killed, and that's sort of on the security front. On the political front, not much happened except that the court system in Egypt has been a little more vocal lately, starting with the upper court invalidating the transfer of two islands to Saudi Arabia. That took place a while back, but this week we saw again a court rejecting requests by governments and various sources to dissolve the Salafi Noor party. This is an Islamist-leaning party that really was in the crosshairs of the authorities, and efforts to shut them down have been pushed back by the courts, and that's sort of the latest setback for the Sisi government in terms of where it stands vis-a-vis its fight with the Islamist movement. And with that, thank you for listening. We will be back with you next week, and looking forward to another round.